Got it. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for being with us today to learn more about college planning. And we are here. My name is Veronica Alvarez. I'm with Partner Resource Network. And we have Allison Schaberg from Consolidated Planning Group and Katherine Kurima from Expanding Horizons. So before we start our presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about what is Partner Resource Network and our agency. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. So Partner Resource Network is a parent training and information centers for Texas. We are funded by the Department of Education of Office of Special Education, and we provide free resources for parents of children with disabilities and self-advocates, young adults with disabilities. Our mission is to empower and support the families impacted with a family member with disabilities or special health care needs. So we serve parents of children and youth with disabilities from the ages from 0 to 26. Partner Resource Network was first founded in 1986 and now is comprised of 4 projects: PATH, Team, PEN, and PACT. Myself, I'm the Regional 13 Coordinator, so I serve parents in the Austin and surrounding areas. That is in the Team project. As you can see there in the map, is in the red area. So Team project are the Region 13, and then Region 20 in San Antonio, and Region 1 that covers all the Rio Valley, area. Our services are free, and we offer parent workshops, webinars, youth workshops, information and referrals, one-on-one technical assistance. We do a lot of support in the ARC meetings and the IEP meetings. We do once a year a symposium. We offer also parent leadership training, youth leadership training. So for today, some housekeeping items. So if you have any questions at any time in the presentation, please don't hesitate and type it in the chat box. Or if you want it to be, you can also use the Q&A area, and don't say your name or remark, like that. If you don't want to say who you are, and you can use that option too. And this webinar is being recorded, and we are going to share it in our Facebook page. And also Allison Schaberg from Consolidated Planning Group, she also shared these videos in her YouTube channel. She's going to be talking about that in a little moment. And at the end of this presentation, you are going to receive a survey, an evaluation for this presentation. Please fill that out. Be honest, and with that feedback and that survey, we can have more services, because we report that to our grant. And we do not provide CEUs, but if you need a certificate of attendance, please type it in the chat box, and I can do one for you. So that's me. I'm going to stop sharing. And now Allison Schaberg from Consolidated Planning Group is going to be talking about her organization and agency. She is a passionate advocate for the special need community. She has like 25 years of experience working with families, and she also is a mom of a young child and a child that right now is in college with disabilities. So she has a lot of experience with that. So welcome. And also she's going to introduce us with Katherine too.
Bear with me 1 second. Are you guys seeing my screen from the beginning? Full screen?
Not yet. We can see you.
Let me try one more time. I apologize for that. I'll just get started right here. That's fine. Welcome everybody. Welcome back. If you're back with us for another webinar and you've attended many, we're glad to have you back. And if this is your first time, we're glad to have you with us today. I'm Allison Schaberg, Consolidated Planning Group. We are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We put out a lot of webinars on a pretty regular basis on all things special needs planning, transition planning, all things considered as it relates to planning for your special needs child. We often partner with Partners Resource Network, so we're happy to be back with you today, Veronica. So Consolidated Planning Group, when we take a deep dive in holistic planning, we're talking about protection plans, lifetime care plans, developing these future care costs. What does it look like? How much is it going to cost for the future care of our child once they're in adulthood, once we're gone? We do transition planning, ABLE accounts, advocacy, all kinds of things. We do have a YouTube channel. We'll have that at the end of the presentation. And we have a variety of topics that we speak on that you can go back and see, what topics may be relevant to you going forward. But having said that, enough of me. I'm super excited to have Katherine Kurima with us here today. She shares in the journey that we all share in is the connection of a child with special needs and navigating this on a personal level, and then kind of working on things from a professional level as well. So she is the owner of Expanding Horizons. She's an educational consultant. So having said that, Katherine, I'd like to turn things over to you. I want to remind everybody, like Veronica said, put your questions in the chat box today. We want this to be interactive. Your cameras and microphones are muted, but we can definitely see your correspondence in the chat box, and we aim to get to as many questions as we can. And this meeting will be done on or before 1 o'clock. So if you're planning your lunch hour for work purposes, you should know that as well. Okay, Katherine, I'm turning it right on over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just want to give a little bit more background to my history. I received a degree from Southern Methodist University. I also received the Independent Educational Consultant Certificate from the University of California, Irvine. I have over 10 years of experience in higher education, starting in admissions and now as the sole proprietor of Expanding Horizons Educational Consulting. So I assist students individually throughout the college planning process, and I have a focus on students who I term alternative learners. I'm the parent of 3 students, all very different. One what you would call neurotypical, and then I have 2 neurodiverse and very different pathways. So I have 2 that their pathway is towards a 4-year degree, and then I have one that's pathway is geared more towards a certificate program or maybe vocational learning. So just because I'm a college consultant doesn't mean that I think that a 4-year college is the right path for everybody. I like for students to understand all of their options. I'm also a member of TACAC, HECA, the Learning Disabilities Association, and the IDA. So this is a very broad topic, college planning for alternative learners. First of all, I want to say that you can start early, and as early as junior high. Start talking to your students, help them to explore areas that they're interested in, help them to explore in the areas that their strengths are. Typically, students who go on after high school do or fare better when they're studying or focusing on areas that are interesting to them and that their strengths are in. Also, of course, support them in their weaknesses. You can start talking about and making goals for what your student wants to do after high school, on their terms. But it's never too late to start in junior high. Point out different careers that they might see. A lot of students focus on just what they see in their own family, but there's a lot of opportunities out there. The job market's always changing. I mean, we see that with COVID. There's always a new career pathways. 4 years from now, when students are graduating from college, they're going to be new careers in different fields. So keep an open mind and allow students to explore their options, whatever they may be. So first of all, I'm going to
I wanted to just ask if you had any recommendations, because I've seen like guidance officers, offices, and maybe sometimes even the community college, they may have a free test, like an assessment, like
yes.
Can you talk about that?
Yes, actually, I have my students use one of the community college or a two-year college. They have, community has access to some of these programs where they can go in and search on the website for career links, career resources. And one that's popular that some people pay for, it's called AchieveWorks, or now I think it's called True Talent. So it helps you explore your interests and maybe your personality, because understanding who you are kind of helps you figure out what area might be a good fit for you. But the two-year schools have great resources for college planning. You can also go to your guidance counselor. Different school districts use different tools like Naviance and different ones. So they have like surveys and assessments on there too. Those are always great to start talking about in 8th grade and 9th grade and have your students. And I like them because they're not intense. You know, there's something called U-Science, but for my kids with ADHD, they're just not going to answer all those questions, you know. So, you know, they just give you snippets. There's also people that will do further the Berkman, which is more detailed. And then, of course, you know, there's the Texas Workforce Commission, vocational rehab. You know, you might have an opportunity to do vocational evaluations if your student is eligible under that. But I want to first talk about what happens after high school. Most of the students that I work with are college bound, and you know, this is a very broad topic, and I'm only covering a little portion. And you know, there's also a wide variety of students that have learning differences or are neurodiverse with different types of capabilities. So first of all, the gap year, which is actually very common in Europe, as where students take a year off after high school to kind of find themselves, you know, determine, you know, what their interests are, where they want to go. Sometimes it involves working, sometimes it involves volunteering, traveling, maybe taking some local courses, those types of things. The transitional programs are for students that are thinking about college, but they're not quite ready. Maybe they need kind of a bridge program. Then after that, you have vocational or certificate programs, which are under 2 years, maybe a year to year and a half, and they get certified in certain vocational areas. Then you have your 2-year college programs, which are the Associate of Arts, the Associate of Science, or the Associate of Applied Science. And depending on you know, how you follow it, depending on the school, you can transfer those over to a 4-year school whenever you're ready. So perhaps you're not quite ready for the rigor of a 4-year program. You start off in a 2-year program where you do have to take, what's different about the vocational programs and the associate programs, you know, you do have to take your core classes, the English, the math, and so forth, along with the courses of study that you're interested in. And then, of course, you have 4-year programs and the bachelor degree programs. And I'll go into more detail about this.
And one thing I wanted to mention here is in the community college sector in the state of Texas, so we're like mostly talking to Texas people here, that most community college credits do transfer to the state universities. There is a few exceptions on math and science courses for UT and A&M. But for the most part, the community colleges in Texas, those credits do transfer to those state universities, and there can be some conflicts if you're transferring to a private university. But there is a website to check that to see if those credits will transfer. But that is the general rule of thumb. Now, when you're trying to transfer community college credits to outside of the state, then it gets clunkier. It's not as pretty.
Definitely. And it's always a good idea to maintain contact with the transfer advisor to make sure you're following, you know, your course load and so forth. They can help you with that. So these are examples of transitional or postgraduate programs. Now, these are for students that, these top 4 are for students that, you know, struggle maybe with their executive function, maybe socially, but academically, you know, they're pretty ready for college. These programs, you do get some college credit. Then you have programs like college living experience and the college internship program, where, you know, you're in a specific program where they're helping you learn how to live in an apartment or live with a roommate, and they're helping you with social skills, maybe study skills. And then you have to pay extra to attend classes locally. And these are just examples of things to think about, you know, that there are options for various students, right? And then next I'll talk about the levels of support in college. So LD, learning differences, I like to call them alternative learners. I just like that term. So that there are 3 types of services that you can receive in college for learning differences, or, you know, if you have a physical disability and so forth. Any school that is receiving federal funding, or they're delivering federal loans, they have to have basic services required. You know, accommodations to allow students access to their education. The next level is a school that has the basic services, but they have some more offerings such as workshops. Maybe they have some additional tutoring. You know, and some schools have tutoring for all students, like some of the private schools and so forth. Then you have the higher level, which are comprehensive or structured programs, which they have additional fees. So maybe you meet with a coordinator each week to help you stay on track, maybe help with some of those executive function skills, you know, help you to navigate, you know, where you're going. Some of these programs might be like University of Arizona, the SALT program. There's a program at Texas Tech where you have to pay extra, and, you know, you maybe don't have to, you know, maybe you only need it for a year. You know, and they are, you know, they have limited spots. So just to let you know that these are the different options.
So the comprehensive or structured, that is basically offered through some of these schools directly. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Like Texas Tech has a specific program that you can pay extra. But there are programs like Bloom Consulting comes to mind. Is one that is in Texas. They kind of walk alongside students. Yeah, Mansfield Hall, which is has a post-grad program. They also have virtual assistants, like you can hire them to help you navigate through the year, you know, navigate tutoring. They'll do virtual tutoring and so forth. There's also a program on the East, you know, there's programs all over. So there's lots of programs to consider, but some schools will have it at their school, so you wouldn't need to find a third party, but you do pay extra, you know, and they're really great programs, like the one at Texas Tech and the one at Arizona, and there's more, you know, you just have to
That's awesome.
Search it out and ask questions, right?
And I think the point that you made that the like acceptance rate, or like the spaces that they have, are limited. So it's like the early bird, you know, gets the worm, you know, like, so doing your planning and starting this planning process earlier, if you've got a child that's a freshman or a sophomore, it's not too early to start looking at these things. Start making your spreadsheet as a parent of these might be viable options. You might work with a consultant like Katherine to help you streamline the viable options, because I know for me as a parent, when I was going through this, it was a little overwhelming. There was a lot of information, a lot of programs. If I'm not a specialist in evaluating college programs for, you know, children that learn differently, how do I navigate this? Yeah. And so, but getting on that early is going to give you more options to get the the option that's right for you, and to fill some of those, to take one of those slots that are not always so many.
Right. I mean, it's overwhelming for any student, and then to add on, you know, these additional challenges, you know, it's just a little bit more. You can do it. You just have to know you have to spend the time to research. As far as a college search, and this, you know, a lot of this is geared for any student. You want to check the college freshman profile of the school to see where your student fits academically. There's over 3,000 four-year universities throughout the US, so there's a school for everybody, right? You just have to find where they fit on the profile. Did you have a question? Okay.
No, I'm taking it all in. This is really good.
Okay. And, you know, pay attention to your GPA and in Texas, the class rank is important with the state schools. When you're looking out of state, that won't be as crucial. Now, these days, because of the pandemic and the issues with testing, schools are looking more closely at your GPA and what type of classes you're taking. So if you're a student who might be on the spectrum, and you have multiple learning issues like dyslexia and ADHD, and you're focused on going to particular schools, really be realistic about where they will fall in. Be careful about course selection. If your student is able to take advanced courses, make sure that they can easily make at least a B, okay? Because schools are looking to see that that you challenge yourself, to the right level. But I'm of the mind, there's no point in stressing a student out. They have a lot of stress in regular life, plus the pandemic, my goodness, right? And then be realistic about the test score. And actually, this year, a lot of students applied test optional. There's a whole thing about the testing right now. I do recommend that juniors prep and do take the ACT or SAT, because we don't know what's going to happen over the year. In Florida, test scores are required. In California, they're not. It's just nobody has a crystal ball. And here I have a website where you can check and find schools that have been test optional. You can find schools that have been test optional for quite a while, like DePaul University, and they have a good LD department. There's a lot of schools that have gone test optional. As far as disclosing any kind of issues, the parent and the student should discuss how to do that. Sometimes I have students reveal this in their essay in a way to show what has challenged them and how they've overcome it, without going into too much details. You don't need to submit any kind of documentation regarding any kind of disability or learning issues with the application. You only submit that to the Student Success Center or the Disability Services Office once you've been admitted.
Katherine, a couple of things that I've seen this year, and I think you've seen it too, is that there has been a lot more flexibility with the SAT and the ACT because of the pandemic, because of testing being canceled, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there has been a lot more flexibility. Some of our students have major anxiety and test anxiety. They don't test well. Some of our students are going to go in through the community college first, regardless. Right. If you know your student's going to go in through the community college regardless, then
you don't even need a test score.
It's not necessary to put them through that stress of the SAT and the ACT.
Exactly.
So the other thing I just wanted to mention here before we move on, and I really share this with all of our families, this is a job for the parents with the student, not the student with the parents. Because I know, we're at this point where we're pushing them to more independence and things like this. What I would say is, whenever I was navigating this with my student, it was ridiculous. All these schools are different. There's no this is the cookie cutter plan that all of them subscribe to, when applications are all the stuff. So I guess what I'm saying to you is, it is not a job for an 18-year-old neurotypical kid to do on their own. And if you have a learning diverse, child, they definitely need your help. And the other piece that I want to say is, while I understand that there are guidance counselors at the school and things like that, and then they have college day where some of these colleges come in there and shake hands with people or whatever. Your college counselor, they may direct them to take the ACT or the SAT, but they are like the whole student body, and some of them are working with multiple schools. So if you have the notion that your college counselor at school is going to handle these things, they just simply don't have the capacity. So I just wanted to share that of get ready, put on your boots, get your spreadsheet, and partner up with your student on this, because they don't know what they don't know. And honestly, as parents, we don't know what we don't know, but they definitely need our help.
Yes. Well, and I want to touch on definitely, if your student is planning to go through a vocational program or a 2-year program, for sure, you do not need a test score. You'll have to take the TWI for placement, but and I have students that have severe anxiety, and thankfully, a lot of schools have gone test optional for about 3. Some of them are just trying it out for a couple of years, but this was a good year for some of my students, right? What I'm talking about is people that are good test takers, as far as trying to prep for the test and so forth. Yes, and the college counselors, I like to say that I support what they do. There are, in Texas, they have a caseload of about 550, and they wear a lot of hats. It's not their fault. They're just overworked, and they're having to schedule and so forth. So they don't really know all the details. And it is needs to be a partnership with the parent and the student. The student needs to do the work. They have to be the ones doing the essay and filling out the application, but the parent can step in and help them search the right path and have conversations all the time about, where do you see yourself? What kind of environment do you see yourself in, and then I can talk about finding a good fit. With all of my students, I tell them, it's important to think about the academic fit, the social fit, the financial fit. And then with students that have some sort of disability or they're an alternative learner, looking at the Disability Services Office is important. If your student has been diagnosed with a disability, like ADHD or processing, whatever it is, make sure that you've had diagnostic testing after the age of 16 through the school if you can. Of course, some schools are a little bit more relaxed on what type of documentation they take, and some schools are more specific. They want to have a professional psychologist produce this information, or a medical doctor. So you always check with the colleges that you're interested in. This slide, I talk about the SAT, ACT, and things are changing. This year for 2022, I have a mix of students that are applying test optional, and of course some schools, like in Florida, you're required to have a test score. So it just really depends on where you're looking. And then, as Allison said, the 2-year schools, you don't need that. When you're doing the research, look at the college websites and see where the GPA is and see if it's comparable with your students. Review the websites of the Disability Services Office, see what services they provide, who their staff is, physically visit them when you're doing college trips. You can start doing college trips as early as sophomore year. I think before that, it's a little more difficult for students to foresee what their future might be. You'll start on your applications in the summer before senior year. And then for your schools on your college list that you're really interested in, find out about how you register or apply for services through the Disability Services Office. And if they have a comprehensive program, definitely get the ball rolling on that if they have limited spots. Think about what size environment your student would be best in. Some students that might have anxiety, maybe they want to be anonymous. They like the big classes. Or you have students that maybe have some executive function issues or processing, and maybe a smaller class size might be better. When you're looking at smaller programs, you're able to have, classes less than 100 students, and you get to know your professors, and the professors, the ones that like to teach, are really good at mentoring students. Check with the Disability Services Department to see what their background is, the professionals that are working there, because they will be the ones that will act as liaisons between the professors and the students. So all those students will have services and accommodations. Sometimes a student will need to, they need to approach the professor of their classes with their accommodations, and they might have a professor that's old school and tell them, I don't allow computers in here. And the student needs to self-advocate and go to the Disability Services office. Then think about, do you want to be close to home? I mean, a lot of students that have learning issues or maybe mental health issues, they tend to stay close to home. But I have other students that, are very academic and college bound, and there's a lot of programs all over the US that they can look at. And then the red flag down here, if there's not a website on, for the Disability Services office, or there's no director, that can be a red flag. So you want to check that out, check what programs that they have. And I did want to mention about self-advocacy, because I didn't cover it, and I know Veronica's mentioned it, and Allison. It's so important that our kids self-advocate. That is one of the single most important traits of showing their success. They need to be able to explain, what it is that, their learning issues are, or their disability, and what they need to be able to access their education.
Katherine, a couple of things I wanted to hit on the testing. The testing requirements, as you mentioned, all testing requirements are different for every disability office. And I suggest families, if you've got a child and you know that child needs accommodations, I suggest figuring out the school that has the degree program that you're interested in, and then secondarily, shop the offices of disability and find out what's going to be the good fit, kind of working it backwards. But when it comes to this testing, the testing can be expensive. The timeline for getting the testing done could be a while. A lot of the mental health professionals, if you haven't noticed already, are backed up. Some of them aren't even taking new new customers. So a couple of things, as she mentioned, and this is ever changing because of the pandemic. If you have old testing that is older than your 16-year-old child or whatever, but your child has a permanent disability that really hasn't changed, you may, and this may not be on their website, but you may ask the Office of Disability if they will take older testing if it is accompanied by a new recent letter from the psychologist or psychiatrist or primary care physician, et cetera. We've definitely seen a lot of them take those. Another consideration, so testing, when you're doing some of this testing, it could be $2,500 to $3,500. Typically not covered by insurance. It's pretty expensive, and most of the school districts don't do the particular testing that you need for this. They, it's kind of hit and miss if it's going to be appropriate for this. But another door is through vocational rehab through the Texas Workforce Commission. And she was talking about those vocational evaluations. Sometimes they'll do the neuropsych testing, the learning disability testing, or whatever. So if your child is involved with or enrolled with the Texas Workforce Commission and vocational rehab, then they may be able to get some of this testing completely free, covered under the grants under Texas Workforce Commission. So be creative, think this through, start early, because the timeline, what we don't want is your child to start and need accommodations and not be able to get the accommodations that they need, and they're kind of starting with both hands behind their back. But I think the clearest message ever is that every single one of these schools and their offices of disability and their guidelines are all different. So you just can't take one and assume it's the same for the other.
Right. And definitely don't go out and spend thousands of dollars, to spend the time to contact those individual schools and find out what they require. I mean, some schools will just take your diagnostic testing from the school. They might even just take a letter from a doctor. So it's definitely worth taking that time. So
we have a question.
Sure.
It says, will colleges accept a read from the school district, or will it need to be a new full evaluation?
It depends on what's in that evaluation. Some schools, they want to have the cognitive measurement after the age of 16. There's different, I'm not a diagnostician, so I can't tell you which, those different ones. They'll want updated academic achievement scores, the diagnosis, history of accommodations, but you need to check with the individual school and see, what part of those evaluations they might take. Does that make sense?
And oftentimes they don't take, so you cannot assume if you already have an IEP or a 504
Right.
in the public school that you're just going to flop that IEP over to the college and they're going to be like, yay, we're going to do this too. So that definitely doesn't work that way. And I would say that it's been my experience that they take less of the school than what you would like or hope. So I would say the best path would be, don't count on that. You better find out what they need and do what they need, because most of the time that's exactly what they do not accept.
Yes. Okay, so these are examples of colleges with really strong disability services programs by region, and it's not comprehensive. Landmark is one that is actually specifically geared or aligned with students that have learning differences. All of the students have learning differences. Also Dean, there's also Curry and Mitchell, Leslie, Muhlenberg, Franklin Pierce, Dickinson, Hofstra, Gallaudet, which is the for deaf students. In the South, you have University of the Ozarks, you have Texas Tech, Lynn University, High Point, which, not only do they have good services, it's very student focused in general. It's great. Schreiner, which is here in Texas, they have really great services for students that have learning differences. Beacon, Baylor has a good program. East Carolina, Marshall. In the Midwest, you have University of Tulsa, DePaul, Muskingum, Southern Illinois, University of Indianapolis. And in the West, you have University of Arizona, which I've mentioned before. They have the renowned SALT Center, which has been around for decades. Whittier, University of Montana, Marymount College, and University of Denver. These are just examples of, if you want to see what a good program offers and the different options, that's good to compare. And I know the term Asperger's is old. This is an older slide, but for students that are on the autism spectrum and perhaps have some of those challenges with social skills, these are some good examples of programs that they might want to look at if they're looking for out of state. I realize we have a lot of students from Texas, but part of my goal is to help families expand the ideas of where they're looking, because if they're able to go out of state, or maybe they want to explore different perspectives and spread their wings, there are places that you can look. And these are just suggestions of online resources to go to. You've probably seen some of them. Understood always has lots of topics. These are specific to different learning issues. And then I have a list of books here that I recommend. Two that I really like are this one, College Success for Students with Disabilities. And then From High School to College, Elizabeth Hamblett is a really great resource. She actually has a new book that's coming out, so I'm not sure if this is still available. And then, of course, the big K&W guide has a lot of basic information about different programs, like that I talked about, the different steps, the basic disability program, and then you have a little more added services and the comprehensive. Yeah. there you have it.
This is really good. And so we will get our slides to Veronica in a PDF. And so you guys will have a copy of all of these that are on the screen. And have you as far as the websites. I know that I think college.org is another one. There's so many of them out there, but I think you know, what we hope that you guys are going to walk away from this meeting is to know that there are definite options for you, for your child that learns differently, and paths forward. Because I think sometimes, I want to use the word desperation, but like, I don't know, sometimes as parents, we're feeling a little exhausted and we're feeling a little overwhelmed. And how do I dissect all of this? And how do I come up with a plan? And how do I know that this works? And, you know, because we are outside of the 9, you know, dots with our kids. And so this is really, really good. So I'm going to talk just for a second about some of the financial considerations for the FAFSA. The FAFSA opens up basically October 1st of each year. And so as you're planning, it comes down to dollars and cents and how much does this cost and what can we afford and things like that. Well, the FAFSA is going to help determine any financial aid that your student may get. Don't put yourself in a box. Don't assume that you make too much money and that your child won't qualify for anything, because that's not always true. And there are a lot of scholarships out there that your child may qualify for, but if you don't do the FAFSA, they automatically disqualify for it because it's a requirement for the scholarship application to complete the FAFSA.
I want to add real quickly that it will be required for graduation for students to fill out the FAFSA for the state of Texas, just for the state of Texas.
And what I would say, that's an interesting thing that's a requirement for the students, because what my experience is with the FAFSA, these students, so yes, they can go through it, but basically they can't do it on their own because of the financial information that is requested of the family and of the parents that the student wouldn't have any knowledge about, their tax returns and that kind of thing. So it's kind of an interesting journey. But anyway, so having said that, October 1st, it opens up. Your student has a FAFSA login. The parent has a FAFSA login, just so you know. There is two. But anyway, as it relates to money and money in the right buckets, there are some things that are not reportable assets. They basically don't count against you on the FAFSA. IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, basically qualified money. Annuities and cash value life insurance are typically the things that are not going to count against you on the FAFSA. So that's just something to keep in mind about having the money in the right buckets. And this is something that we can help families with if they need help getting the money in the right buckets. So that way their student may be eligible for more aid, scholarships, et cetera, what have you. So that's one thing. So we talked about it October 1st, you know, set this on your timeline. So here's, you know, so this October 1st thing, so your student is just started, they're a senior. They're a senior in high school. So October 1st, this October 1st is when you need to be doing the FAFSA for your senior in high school. I know, it seems crazy. You have this whole school year is what you were thinking, but it doesn't really work that way. So the other thing about funding, I want to talk about scholarships, community-based, school-based, disability, disease-based, sport or music-based, band-based, whatever. Start your spreadsheet, work with your student on this. Know the deadlines. Again, when the applications are due, what is necessary. If you have a student that's not a senior yet, what my recommendation to you is that you research what the essay topics are. So when school gets out, they're a junior, okay? They're a junior, school has gotten out for the summer. Maybe that should be part of the program of getting the essays done during the summer. So that way you're poised and ready for this college application process, firing off the essays. You're not trying to do essays and trying to do your senior year school.
Yeah,
and,
they should be starting in May with their essay, you know, the beginning process. What are the essay topics, brainstorming, and it should be done over the summer.
Don't write your essays for your kids they're
Yes,
hip to that.
don't do that.
Don't do that. And there are professional services that can review essays and can help them edit, help them expand, and help it be a winning essay. So that's good advice. But for the scholarships, just know, so if you have a senior this year, they're a senior in high school, a lot of these scholarships for next year for their college close December 1st. Okay, so they might open October, November, they close December 15th. So you're thinking, oh, well, we're going to work on scholarships over Christmas break. Well, you've already missed a bunch. Okay, there are some other ones that don't open till February, or maybe they announce in April. A lot of them don't even announce the winners until April. But just know that you've got to know your deadlines on this. They're all different. There's a lot of really awesome scholarships. My suggestion, some of the scholarships that are going to give you $500 are just as expensive applications and what you have to jump through hoops for the same scholarship that's going to give you a 4-year or a $20,000 award. So choose wisely. We only have so many hours in the day. This is a lot of nights and weekends of working with your students on these things. And so I spreadsheeted this. I narrowed it down. I personally didn't want to apply for any that were less than $2,500. Because the process was just too much for $250 or $500, which is going to pay for one book, right? So you can just do whatever you want with that, but there is a ton out there. So really, really research that. So let's talk about these students. So what if your kid isn't in the top 10 percentile?
So we have a question about scholarship. Is there ADD-based scholarship too? ADD?
There are. You have to search for them. There's different search tools that you can use. FAFSA is one that's been around for decades. I think there's one called Greenlight. Some schools like Beacon offer scholarships for students with learning differences. So, you just have to spend the time to research it.
Yes.
You can even Google it, right? Just look for scholarship search tools. You shouldn't have to pay to apply for scholarships. You can also check with your school guidance counselor. They might have links to the searches for scholarships.
Also, your child life specialist at the hospital where your child gets treatment or whatever for their disease-specific things. If your child has a disability. So a lot of times the child life specialist has a scholarship list. Another place is, so basically every school that you're applying for, all of them in their financial aid section will have scholarships there. But there's other outside ones. There's the Go Texans. There's all kinds of scholarships that are offered through the rodeo. So you need to check that.
Right, there's lots of local scholarships, maybe for students that has asthma, different medical conditions. Check with the national organizations, the local, state, regional organizations. You're going to have a better chance of getting the scholarship if they're more locally based, because not as many, you're not competing with thousands of students all over the U.S.
Yes, agreed. And one thing that I just want to mention on this, and we'll move on, but a good one for our kids that might not be the top 10 percentile or the A+ students or the 4.0 or what have you, look up the Terry Foundation Scholarship, Terry, Veronica, you could type this, Terry Foundation Scholarship. They are the largest scholarship, it's kind of just run indefinitely forever and ever. They're based out of Houston, and basically what this scholarship is based off of is giving back. So this is a scholarship that my daughter got, and it's 100% 4-year. There's 13 state schools in Texas that it covers. It doesn't cover out of state, but it is a full ride, and they reward students that have a story. Your students have a story. They rose above, right? That's the story. They award these scholarships to the kids that have decent grades. They don't have to have perfect test scores, but decent grades, and for students that have given back. So think service hours. Maybe your child isn't athletic. Maybe they're not a genius, but maybe they could give back, maybe rise above and beyond the things that they've gone through. They've given back and they've done decent across all of those things. This is an awesome scholarship and you should check it out. So Terry Foundation Scholarship. So research early, know your deadlines. They're all different. A 529 college savings plan clearly can pay for college. A 529A for ABLE account can also pay for college. and or tutoring or some of these things. And again, I mentioned vocational rehab earlier. We do have webinars completely on vocational rehab. But if you're working with the Texas Workforce Commission vocational rehab #1, your student with a disability can start working with them as early as age 14, okay? 14 to 22. So the sooner you get going with them, the better. But it is possible that some of these expenses in college and other things, or other technical schools or certificates or other things like that, may be covered by the vocational rehab program if it's in line with the goals established within the plan for the individual to eventually be able to find competitive employment. So these are all things that should be on your radar. If you're not familiar with the vocational rehab, your school, your public school, has a consultant for VR there, and you can talk with them. But there is a vocational rehab locator. You can reach out to us. We can get you in contact with them as well. But these are all things to think about from a funding perspective that might make the difference. But again, the early bird gets the worm. Do your FAFSA October 1st. So senior year, October 1st, FAFSA is due. College scholarships are opening up right now for your senior in high school for the following year. And a lot of those deadlines are going to be by December 31st of the senior year. So just keep that all in mind. Okay, so
how do we know what the essay should be about?
Are they talking about the college essay or the scholarship essay? The college essay, you think?
Yeah.
There's if you're applying in Texas, there's specific essays. If you look at Apply Texas, or you can go directly to like University of Houston and look under undergraduate admissions, freshman application, and it'll list what the essays are. There's also the Common App has specific essays to choose from, and each college will list, like some of the Texas schools specifically just want topic A for the Apply Texas. And then if you're looking out of the state of Texas, they might have different additional questions, and you just have to, keep a spreadsheet. And when they're a junior in the spring and the beginning of the summer, the new essays haven't come out, but you can look and see what the ones are for the previous year and kind of get an idea. I hope that answers the question.
So Katherine, but for the senior year, for the guy that's a senior, the essays are out.
Oh yeah, they're out now. Yeah, they've been out.
If your kid's a junior, if your kid's a junior, the essays for next year aren't out yet, is what she's saying. But if your child's a senior, right, then they are out.
They should be doing their essay right now. I mean, it should be my fast deadline, hard and fast deadline for students is October 1st. They need to have all of their essays and their applications done. And, it takes time to write the essay, so.
And it's not just one. I made my student write all 3 of them. So there were 3 essay prompts. And basically, if they write all 3 of them, A, B, or C, most of the scholarships, not all of them, but most of them choose one of those essays. So, or what they're requesting can easily be adapted from A, B, or C.
You can tweak it and adjust it for sure.
So having all 3, not just one, is important. And I will say, I don't know, I was probably a mean mom, but I really made my daughter do this over that summer. And, school got out, and I think my deadline for her was July 15th or something early. And there were tears. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, there were tears. This was hard. This was pushing them. And, the helicopter mom wants to swoon in and help them write this and all these other things. But you just got to give feedback, and you got to, and some of the tears were, we had a professional, review this, and then there was all these tweaks, and she was just so frustrated. She didn't want to keep tweaking it and things like that. But be patient, start early. And I mean, but ultimately our hard work paid off. I mean, she was granted 11 scholarships, and we gave 9 of them back because the one was so big she didn't need the other ones. So it was painful, and there were tears. Mother of the Year badge revoked, but we got there, and we got there in a place of going where she needed to be with the accommodations that she needed. and at a price of free was pretty awesome. And so, I mean, there's just a lot of things that you can do along the way that will help. So all of these things, we talk about special needs financial planning all the time. If you've got a child that's transitioning, these are things that should be on your radar. We definitely have webinars on all of these topics, and you can find those on our YouTube channel. If you need help one-on-one on your unique situation, that's what we're here for. You can certainly reach out. And then Katherine, Expanding Horizons Educational Consulting. You might need her services. She's really good at what she does. And so this is going to be how you're going to be able to reach out to her. And can you talk about that a little bit, Katherine?
Yeah, well, I want to touch on that because I am a sole practitioner. I'm a member of Higher Education Consultants Association. There's also another organization called the Independent Educational Consultants Association. And if you do want to find somebody, look up those organizations, and they have a directory. So you can make sure that they're a member, because they encourage professional development. They are, they're vested as members. And then, if you're interested, you can go to my website and just look that over. There's a lot of consultants, throughout the U.S., in Texas and all over. So
can you mention those websites again so Veronica can put them in the chat box?
Yes, I'll actually, it's HECA or IECA.
Are you typing in, Katherine?
I'm sorry?
Awesome.
Okay.
We have a question in the Q&A, Allison. Just one. I think that we haven't addressed that, and we are almost over.
Okay.
So
yes.
with the community college, you just need to contact them and ask them what they're looking for. Typically, it's some kind of diagnostic evaluation or a letter from a doctor. The 504 and the IEPs do not carry over to college. It's a separate law that it's covered under. So, there might be schools that will say, yes, we'll look at it, but typically, they're not going to look at that paperwork.
For sure. Well, I would just like to thank everybody again for being here with us today. And thank you, Katherine, for all your awesome information. It kind of helps put feet on it. And it's early, so it's August. Here you are, so you've got some time, and you're not finding out in January that scholarship applications were due in December anyway. Put your plan together, have a plan and work your plan. You've totally got this, and learn some really valuable information, but we're happy to help you.
Start early.
Yes.
Don't start senior year. When you're college,
you cannot start early enough.
Don't come fall of your senior year and think, what do I do now? Because everybody's busy.
Right. That is for sure. So
thanks, everybody. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Katherine.
Bye. Thank you.
Wrap up.
Thank you.
See you in the next one.
Yes. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye. You stop the recording, Allison?